Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a model showcase video for this 1/16 scale radio-controlled initial production German Tiger I. The model that you see here was built for commission and belongs to a private collector. I often take on commission build projects from models ranging from 1/35 scale all the way up to 1/6 scale. As for availability and pricing information, that information would be best by contacting me through the email address listed below, which is info@eastcoastarmory.com. First, a quick walk around the model. The project itself is heavily influenced and inspired by my 1/6 scale initial production Leningrad Tiger I. That project I have a whole video series on, and that can be found in my video listings as well as on EastCoastArmory.com. The customer, who is also a relative of mine, likes that model so much that he went ahead and wanted to have a version of that Tiger for himself, only in 1/16 scale and radio controlled. For the base starter model, the model started off as a fully assembled, pre-built, radio-controlled Heng Long 1/16 scale Tiger I. The model underwent a lot of both external as well as mechanical upgrades to bring it to the condition and state that you see it here. Tank features a lot of aftermarket components from various manufacturers, of which we'll all be going over in this video. The model came partially converted by the customer, and I went ahead and finished the model from where he left off. Starting with the model suspension, like I mentioned before, the starter model was that of a Heng Long Tiger I. Now, it's also important to note that this version of the Heng Long tank is their current 2015 variant. Their earlier generation of Tiger I was a little bit different in a lot of the functions as well as the components. This version here is the improved variant with the Allen screws that hold together the wheels, much in the same way that you'll see on the Taken versions of the Tiger I tank. The road wheels that you see on this model here are the stock Heng Long versions. The rubber tire is molded into the plastic wheel and is simply painted to replicate that of rubber. The wheels that you see here were requested to be kept by the client, as he didn't want to go ahead and replace these with the aftermarket ones, which are found on the aftermarket scene. However, the tank does feature a metal sprocket, replacement metal rear either wheel, and metal track. All of the metal components that I have just mentioned were purchased off of eBay via the seller RC Dynasty. The seller is highly recommended, and he does have a very wide range of aftermarket components for the Heng Long and Taken tanks. Starting with the model's gearbox, here we have the original Heng Long gearbox. As you can see, the gearbox contains broad plastic gears, and the gear over here does have an interrupter in it. The gearbox is not shoddy or anything, and I have one of these stock in the previous Heng Long build that I've done, in which that vehicle runs perfectly fine. However, because of the metal running gear, namely the track and the sprockets, we went ahead and swapped out the plastic gearbox for an all brass gearbox in order to keep the whole drivetrain with metal on metal components, with the exception of the road wheels. As for the sprocket, the metal sprocket is very nicely done. It's a very simple installation. It's just done by a simple hex bolt that gets removed. Here we have the stock Heng Long version. As you can see, it's made out of plastic. As for the idler tube was also replaced. Here we have the stock plastic idler. Now, unlike the Taken tanks in which the idler wheel is adjustable, on the Heng Long tanks they are fixed. Another feature that you find on Heng Long tanks is that the center of the hubcap has a hole in it in order to remove or get access to the fastener. The hole does hurt the look of the model, so rather than keeping the hole, I went ahead and plugged up the hole with a little bit of resin and flared it into the rest of the idler hubcap. The idlers are on nice and secure. However, if emergency ever arises, I need to get access to them, you could simply just drill out the resin plug in order to get access to the fastener. However, getting access to the fastener is a rare occurrence, specifically since the fasteners themselves, which are used to bolt to the tank, were installed via strong Loctite. Like I mentioned earlier, the tank also features an aftermarket metal track. The track that the tank originally came with is not terrible. It's made out of plastic and is somewhat durable and can take up the wear of rear control use pretty well. However, on the interior portion of the track, the Heng Long track is a copy off of the Tamiya style track links, in which their center hinges are absent. Tamiya does this due to making the track links easier to cast and mold. However, the little hinge piece does somewhat hurt the look of the tank. The aftermarket track links that we have here are made out of metal, and I believe are from a Toro, as a small little M is molded into the track links themselves. The track links are like the correct version for the Tiger I in that there's no broken hinge portion on the inside of the links. It is a hinge through and through. The metal track gives the tank a little bit more weight, which helps it ride a lot smoother, and it also helps it contour with the terrain a lot better, as it gives it a little bit more traction compared to the lighter weight plastic track. Also, another advantage about the metal track is that the more the tank is driven, the track will begin to wear, and thus causing the track to look a little bit more realistic with the weathering. Also, like with my other Tiger I builds, I went ahead and painted all of the Zerk fittings on the sprocket, as well as on the center portion of the road wheels with red paint. Like I always mention in these videos, on all early rubber-rimmed road wheel Tiger Is, these portions here are painted in red for higher visibility. Moving our way to the back of the model, you'll see that this version here is a lot different than that compared to your stock Heng Long vehicle. The stock Heng Long model is that of the early production, which featured the two FIFO systems, which were located on the back. This being an initial production Tiger, the FIFO system wasn't developed yet, so would be absent on this style of Tiger I. To remove the FIFO system, everything is all bolt-together assembly, and the FIFO system was simply removed, and its locations were puttied over, removing all the fastener holes. In order to fully make this backdate the tank to an initial production Tiger, a lot of the other details need to have been altered and moved in the way you see here. First, starting with the rear mud flaps, the Heng Long model features the early style hinged mud flap that would hinge upward, and on the real tank had a small little portion that would hinge away in order for the tank to fit in transport mode with the outer road wheels removed. This style here is the style that predates those. As you can see, they're a lot smaller, and unlike the early style, these ones here are not hinged. They are permanently affixed to the rear wall. Also, they have three little support ribs in order to give them some rigidity. The fenders that you see here are completely scratch built out of sheet metal and are all soldered together. The sheet metal fenders actually mount to a box frame, just like on the other preceding versions of the Tiger I. However, for this model here, I went ahead and deleted the molded-in box frame and fabricated a new one out of Plastruct that better fits the frame of the mud flap. Some other quick detailing to point out was the revision of the stock tow hitch mount. The tow hitch had its missing fasteners added to the bottom portion, and its center hole was drilled into it. These are very quick modifications that can be made to any 1/16 scale Heng Long or Tiger or even a Tamiya Tiger I that greatly helps improve the accuracy of the build. Moving up from the tow hitch takes us to the tank's jack. The jack on the Tiger I stayed as pretty much as a constant throughout the whole of the Tiger I's production life. The version that you see here is a new casting from eastcoastarmory.com. The piece features a lot more enhanced detailing from this stock Heng Long original. The piece is not hollow underneath. It also has its jack mounts molded in, and they are appropriately detailed. The jack also is equipped with its retracted handlebar as well as its end cap plate. Moving up from the jack takes us to an interesting component that is exclusively found on initial production Tiger I's, and that is of the antenna stub. The original purpose of this mount here was that on the Tiger I, the antenna was supposed to be in the rearmost portion of the vehicle. However, this portion here was never really used as the radio was kept inside the hull. However, on a few of the very early production versions of the Tiger I, the radio antenna stub mount was present, even though it wasn't used. The version that you see here is included with the eastcoastarmory.com initial production conversion set. Moving away from the antenna takes us to the tank's exhaust manifolds. The manifolds that you see here are another new addition to the eastcoastarmory.com product line. The set includes a replacement armored cover, an exhaust stack, as well as the puffer caps. The armored cover is improved from the stock Heng Long version in that it has its correct shape, it has its rough cast texturing, and also includes its lift lugs, which are all absent on the stock Heng Long units. The exhaust stacks themselves are offered either as solid or as hollowed out in order for you to connect the smoke system so that the components can puff away. Now, one advantage about using this style of exhaust is that the Heng Long units are actually hollow in the back, because of which when the smoke gets emitted from the smoke generator, it tends to just gush out all over this portion here, and with the armored shield in the way, the smoke just bellows out and sinks to the bottom portion here of the hull. With the exhaust stacks being solid and there's a channel drilled into the exhaust stack, the air from the smoke unit is actually focused and is funneled out through the exhaust stacks, which will focus all of the smoke to be emitted from the puffer cap section and puffer cap section only. There is no hemorrhaging of smoke from this layout here. Moving our way to the center takes us to the cold weather starter plate. The starter plate that you see here is the stock Heng Long version, as it's interesting as the version that Heng Long chose to mold in is the version that is found on initial production Tigers. The only difference is that the Heng Long unit mounts the jack plate in a vertical format. For that of an initial production Tiger, it is found in this layout over here. To do the component, it was a simple addition. I simply just drilled the new locations for the fasteners and mounted it to the hull with the space gap, which is appropriate for the mounting of these plates on the real Tiger tank. Moving our way to the left portion of the plate takes us to first the wire clipper and then to the jack block. As we could see on this version of the Tiger, they are located in a different portion than on your later version Tigers. On the initial production version, rather than mounting these pieces in the front portion, the front right-hand portion of the tank, they're found here on the rear plate. Both of these components are stock Heng Long and were simply just moved from their current location. One feature that's nice about this version of the Heng Long tank is that these components here were actually molded on a separate runner and were not integrally molded into the top deck of the vehicle. This made moving of the parts very simple, as no bodywork was needed and nothing was needed to have been deleted or destroyed. Another key difference between the initial tanks and the later versions is that of the toolbox. As we can see, the toolbox is not found in your normal location, which would be right over the fender in this location here. The purpose of mounting the toolbox horizontal like you see here on other versions of the tank is in order for it to fit with the FIFO system canisters in the way. Since this version predates the FIFO system, the toolbox is a little bit different. The toolbox that you see here is another resin casting and is also included with the EastCoastArmory.com initial production Tiger conversion set. Moving our way to the side portions of the model, you will see that this version of the Tiger I is absent of any type of side skirts or any type of bosses to mount the side skirts on. This is as per the real vehicles, as those features were not developed yet. One unique feature of these initial tanks is that of the weld pattern that are found on the side plates. These small little torch cut lines are absent on later versions of the Tiger I. Also, one thing that makes this vehicle unique, since it's missing its side skirts, the tracks will extend from the side plate that you see here. On the opposite side of the tank, you will also notice that it too has absolutely no mounting equipment. As many people know, on later versions of the Tiger I, not only was there a fender or side skirt located in this section here, but there was also the mounting clips as well as the provisions for mounting the transport cable, which would be spooled in this location here. Again, all those details would not be present on a vehicle being this early. In order to backdate the Heng Long tank to this version here, I went ahead and had to remove the molded in side skirts that are present on the Heng Long casting. The side skirts were thoroughly removed and all traces were thoroughly blended away and sanded flush via the bodywork. Also important as of note is that on the Heng Long tank, the sponson hangs slightly lower than that of the side hull. When the side skirt is located on it, it's not very noticeable. However, once the side skirt is removed, the descending sponson will become a serious issue, as it severely hurts the look of the tank. In order to repair that, the side hull was modified in order to cover up that portion of the sponson. As exactly how I did that unfortunately is a trade secret. Moving our way to the front of the model takes us to the front plate. One addition that was made, which was a very simple one, was that of the final drive reinforcement plates, which are found on either side of the lower plate here. These components here are a simple drop-in installation and are made out of die-cast metal. Once added, they greatly improve the look of the Heng Long model. As for the spare track is stock Heng Long and was simply just removed, repainted, weathered, and then remounted after the tank was painted. One feature that I built into the tank was the ability for the fenders to actually hinge open. This is present on both sides. Now, in addition to making the hinges functional, I went ahead and added the small little portion here on either side of the front plate. This little portion here is present on the Tiger I plate and is missing on the Heng Long unit, specifically when you amputate the front fenders. Once the pieces were added, they serve two functions. One, they give you the detail that's supposed to be here on the Tiger I, and two, they keep the fenders in their place and prevent them from drooping downward, which is a feature that would have been found on the real tank. Moving up from the fenders takes us to the small sprocket removal bosses. As you can see, they are just a simple hole found in the front plate. On the Heng Long and version, as well as the preceding later versions of the Tiger I, there is a small little tube that is present in this portion here, and it's molded in. In order to backdate the tank to the initial spec, the tubes were deleted, leaving just the hole that you see here. Moving from the bosses takes us to first the ball-mounted MG34 machine gun. The MG34 barrel on the newer versions of the Heng Long tank are greatly improved from that of the first generation units, in that the barrel is actually that of an MG34 as opposed to an M1919. One quick addition that I made, which was absent on the kit, was that of the small little wing nuts here, which would be used for either the addition of a tarpaulin to protect the machine gun, or for a snorkel cover cap, which would make this component here watertight for when the tank would be used for fording through rivers and lakes. Moving towards the front driver's section, I first went ahead and mounted the missing fastener nubs, which are found here on the armored cover, the shield. Another modification that was made was to the visor itself. The visor on the Heng Long tank, it's all molded one piece and can be greatly improved for detailing. The center portion was removed and a new bottom bar was actually fabricated. In addition to all those, I went ahead and also added the cut slits on each portion here of the armored visor. Keep in mind, on the real tank, this part here can go up and down. The two small holes were also added to the front plate. These holes here are found primarily on early and initial versions of the Tiger I, but were deleted later on as it was deemed to be a weak point in the armor. Moving our way to the top deck takes us first to the tank's bow headlight. The bow headlights on the stock Heng Long are that of your typical Heng Long offering, in which there is a big LED that emerges from the center portion of the headlight housing. This obviously severely hurts the look of the model, but is an easy remedy, as aftermarket replacements like this version here are very common. The versions that you see here are made out of die-cast and were acquired from Oz Armor. Oz Armor also supplied a lot of the other components that I'll be mentioning in this video. One addition that I made to the headlight was that of the armored cover and the conduit detailing. On the stock Heng Long, and this is also applicable for the Taken tank as well, the armored cover is just a simple nub that's molded into the top deck, and the conduit is missing. The conduit and armored hub that you see here are another new addition from eastcoastarmory.com. The set includes the armored cover as well as a wire to bend to form that of the conduit. The set comes with enough components for one Tiger I, which gives you two armored covers and enough wire to bend for the conduits that you see here. Another new addition to the eastcoastarmory.com product line is that of the center blower. This, for the Taken as well as on the Heng Long tank, the center blower is absent on the upper hull casting. However, the mounting recess is present. The version that you see here is a simple drop-in installation. Absolutely no mods are needed to be made to the top deck of the vehicle. As for the hatches on the tank are molded shut, which is standard for a Heng Long model. One mod that I made was I went ahead and added the fastener detailing, which is found on Tiger I's. As we recall, the hinge is bolted to the tank from the inside, and flush mounted bolts are present with their recesses found here on the top deck. This here is a mirror image on the opposite side. Another mod that I went ahead and made was that of the center weld bead, which is found on the top deck. Like I mentioned in a lot of my Tiger I videos, the Tiger I top deck was actually two halves which were welded together. There's a weld bead in the front and another weld bead in the back, both of which are present on this tank. It's a simple addition that also greatly helps improve the look and accuracy. As for the tools that you see here are again the ones that were supplied with the Heng Long model. Like I mentioned before, they were on a separate runner and made installation and building of the tank a lot easier with the addition of these new parts. Moving our way to the side hull detailing takes us first to the gun cleaning staves. As we can see, the gun cleaning staves are a lot more forward than what would be found on a normal Tiger I. On a normal Tiger I, the gun cleaning staves and tow cable clamps would be mounted in this center portion here. However, just like with a lot of things found on these initial production Tigers, the tow cables was another feature that was kind of at this point being figured out with the whole layout. On this version of the tank, the tow cables would actually be affixed to the rear portion here of the grillwork, and then they would snake across the front of the hull, loop around, and make its way back. As you can see on this tank here, I modeled it without the tow cables present. However, the tow cable clamps are fabricated. We have the two tow cable clamps in the back, which are fabricated out of plastic, and it's a mirror image on the opposite side. Another feature that's found for the tow cable is that of this small little channel here. Because of the tow cable tendency to want to go ahead and pop outward and hit the turret, a small steel little U was fabricated in order to act as a guide to keep the tow cables firmly in place. By the early production variants of the Tiger, this layout here was changed to the layout which was common on the Tiger I for the rest of its production life. Also, because it's an initial production Tiger, we can see that there are two crowbars found on the tank. Another one is found on the opposite side in the same exact location. The crowbar is fabricated and scratch built by myself,